Welcome to New Home Insights, the podcast from John Burns Research Consulting. I'm your host, Dean Worley. If you want to follow market trends, demographics, capital, new ideas, and endeavors that touch on housing, we're going to try to make sense of that every couple of weeks. Let's go. Welcome to the New Home Insights podcast. I'm your host, Dean Worley. It's probably safe to assume that all you folks out there listening have heard of a little startup out of Seattle called Zillow. Little self-finance small company that's grown into the biggest real estate marketplace on planet Earth right now. Qadra Evans is the Director of Industry Relations and Sales for new construction at Zillow. That means that she and her team are kind of this key conduit between the new home builder world and Zillow, this biggest real estate marketplace in the world. So, which also means I'm very glad to have Qadra Evans on the show today. Qadra, how you doing?
I'm good. Thank you so much for having me. It's always good hanging with the John Burns crew.
I like that. And I like the hanging with the John Burns crew. It seems so early 2000s. Kate and I are going to talk a lot about how Zillow interacts with new home builders and the new home sector. But then we're going to talk a little bit about product, a little bit about consumers, and a good bit about the market. And we're going to touch on some of the things that Zillow is predicting for 2025, some bold predictions from Zillow. First, though, Qadra, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and then briefly what you do for Zillow?
Sure. Yeah. So Qadra Evans, good to be here with you all. I have been in the real estate industry for an embarrassing amount of time, since the early 2000s, which is why I said hanging with the John Burns crew, apparently. So my whole career has been in the real estate industry. I've kind of maneuvered through lots of different facets of it as markets have shifted and different needs arise. And then I landed at Zillow about 8 years ago. For this newly founded team called Industry Relations. And we're really, like you said conduit, and I like that. We're kind of a liaison, kind of the human face of Zillow, of this kind of big corporate company, and out in the industries that we serve. And so I came over to new construction from the broker side of the business about 3 years ago, and have just been that external face, just a touch point, somebody that's recognizable that people know represents Zillow, and we've kind of got a pulse on what's happening in the new construction industry.
Let's start out, Qadra, with what you do with new home builders on a daily basis. Just kind of at first walk us through what it is. What's the typical interaction? What are your services for the new home builders out there?
So new construction is a very different animal than resale. And so if you think about Zillow and kind of where it came from, it's really been focused on resale listings. So about 9 years ago, Zillow started a new construction organization within its walls. And we have created landing pages for communities where builders can showcase their active inventory, the buildable plans that they've got. They can showcase site plans, what available lots they've got. We allow them to advertise who they are as a builder, what they stand for, so that consumers can really get a sense of what it would be like to work with the builder building this particular home that they're interested in.
And is, from the builder perspective, is the biggest reason just that what we kind of touched on a second ago, which is the size of Zillow? Is that their main reason? And then tell me, just how big is that market size?
The market size is large.
Yeah.
So we kind of hover around this 200 million unique users per month. It varies month to month, but I would say that's a pretty safe bet. And the reason that builders love what we offer is because they showcase their new construction listings alongside resale, which just isn't available on most home shopping sites. It's kind of one or the other. And so they love being on Zillow because they have the opportunity to compete with resale right on the site.
Do they feel like they can compare well to resales? I mean, it's not just the fact that they're new construction, but they are going to be almost by necessity going to be much more at the cutting edge of product and things like that. Is that one of the things that's driving them? Is like, hey, we can compete with those guys in resale.
You know, since COVID, one of the good things COVID did for us was it really sped up the development of all this great technology. And so builders now more than any time than they ever have in history they really give buyers a level of comfort in buying a home that may not even be built yet, because they've got all these cool tools that can help buyers visualize themselves in a home. And that has really been the struggle of builders when competing with resale, because historically buyers haven't gotten that same sense of comfort with something that they can't see and go be inside.
Yeah. So, and especially with a lot of builders now, Not always having a physical presence at their models, or not always building all of their plans as models. They are going to rely more on technology to make up for that, because the resale, you can almost always go and see a resale.
That's right. That's right. And the tools have just gotten that much better. It's amazing to go to some of these conferences and see the technology that's out there for builders.
Yeah, and that's just going to get better and better all the
I
time.
agree.
It may never be virtual reality, because you don't want people throwing up in your sales office, or even at home for that matter. But it does seem like it's going to just get better and better, and be better able to compete. Almost, God, do you see a day where maybe that's just a better experience than going and walking in someone's 25-year-old home and disturbing them, and they're still there and they're watching TV? I don't know.
I mean, on behalf of the builder community, I hope so.
I hope so too. How about in the other kind of motivation for new home build is it also that there's sort of this historically two buckets. There's resale builders and the new home builders, and that Venn diagram is not a perfect circles within the other circle. A lot of those resale buyers don't think of themselves as new home buyers. Is this a way to get those folks who never thought they would be able to get a new home?
Yeah, your question is kind of multifaceted. So
Okay.
there's a couple of things in there that we can unpack. First of all, our data shows that about 42% of buyers are only looking for new construction. That is what they've set out to look for. That's what they end up buying. But then there's this other 58% of buyers that kind of probably start looking for resale. And a lot of people have this misconception that new construction might be out of reach. So they start searching for resale. But with a platform like Zillow, they can start exploring new construction, and hey, maybe it is an option. And that kind of leads me in to the next little facet of what you said is there are so many perceptions out there that new construction is just unattainable. And for a long time, we were seeing maybe 20% premiums on a price for a new construction home versus resale. And now we're seeing all this awesome data coming out that says, no, there's in many markets, new construction is actually less expensive than
Yeah.
resale. But now we've got to go out and kind of shift those perceptions, because they're still there, even though the data is telling us a different story.
Yeah, a lot of that though is going to be, of course, a mix shift. Like we talked about, the new home world can shift much more quickly, and it's getting denser and more attached than the resale world out there. But certainly, it is with buy downs and with a lot of builders really focused on that entry level. You do have some better attainability.
Definitely.
How about any hurdles, or do you get ever pushback from new home builders that, oh, we would rather be focusing on driving eyeballs to our own websites as opposed to Zillow? I mean, what's the answer for those folks?
Well, I would say that depends on the builder. Some builders' websites are superior to others, and we do have products. One of our advertising products is if you go to our community page. First of all, builders can put a link to their website right on that community page, and so if a consumer chooses to click on that, then they are taken off of Zillow straight over to the builder's website, which is something that you don't
Yeah.
see that very frequently on other websites. And so builders love that about what we offer them. We also have advertising products that are specifically intended to get eyeballs to builders' websites if that's what they want. So every builder operates a little bit differently. Some of them are great with eyeballs staying on their listings on Zillow. Others are like, hey, we've got this great website, let's use it. And so we've kind of got an option for anybody.
That's interesting, because it's very sort of forgiving of you, or generous in a sense of you, because you got this huge number of eyeballs on Zillow, but you're willing to share that and let those folks redirect to their own website.
You
Oh,
know, everything we do is for the consumer. So if a consumer has a desire to go check out a builder's website, we want to make sure that that's easily available to them. And so we want what's best for them. And that's where we do everything from that kind of mindset.
is there also a sort of a tech element to this? I mean, you guys are a big company, a very sophisticated company. Is it, without naming names, but generally speaking, is your environment for the consumer a little bit superior technologically than a lot of builder websites?
The range of builder websites varies, so it's hard to answer your question, Dean.
Do you ever actually just sort of take over that responsibility for some maybe smaller builders?
You
The
know,
website?
we have things that can help us take that lift off of the smaller builders. So if you're thinking our big builders, they have abundant resources.
Yeah.
And so their content tends to come to us in a really great way. The smaller builders might not have those resources. So
Yeah.
we at Zillow invest in things that we know consumers want, and then we bring them to our builder partners for them to use. So we've got a company called Listing Media Services, and we have a specific new construction arm of Listing Media Services. They do high resolution photos, 3D tours. They can do drone videos, community videos, anything that a builder might want. And what we've done is, I call it, we've kind of Zillowified it. So we've scaled it. We've made it very, very cost effective for buyers. It's not cost prohibitive in any way. And what it does is it gets that great content to Zillow. We know that consumers want that great content. It helps builders' listings perform better on Zillow. So it's like a win-win-win. I don't know how many wins I've just said.
A lot of wins.
Win-win all the way around.
Quad wins, perhaps.
That's right.
I like that. Zillify them. And also, isn't Zillowing also a verb in some quarters?
Yes, I think Zillowing is now a verb, which I love.
I'm a big fan of making up verbs, so I'm all in favor of that. Have you ever seen a builder's website that was so bad you wanted to take it over, even maybe you do so secretly?
I'm just gonna say no comment to that.
I'm kidding. Let me ask you one last question in terms of builders. Do they tend to be kind of smaller private? But I think you also have some large builders and some public builders that work with you as well, don't you?
We work with the majority of large public builders. We work with many of the top 200 builders. You'd be hard pressed to find a builder that we don't really work with, because we've got teams that are constantly going out and trying to get those builders onto the site.
Okay. And they've seen the value, obviously, or they wouldn't be working with you.
That's right.
Let's talk about now a couple of topics, product and consumers, and also quite a bit about the market. And by way of introducing that, you folks, the Zillow, came out with kind of these predictions for 2025. And by the way, we're recording this in early mid-December of 2024 still, so it's not quite 2025 yet. But these things, they broadly touch on products and consumer trends and also the market. So we'll talk about those two kind of large topics, and we'll sort of weave in those predictions as we go. How's that?
That sounds great.
So we'll do product and consumers. And one of the things you guys are predicting is that Americans are going to increasingly embrace the small home. Why do you predict that? And what does that mean?
I mean, it might sound kind of obvious. I think this smaller home living is something that's it's kind of a function of affordability. So the smaller the home, the more affordable it likely is. I love this statistic that we found. 35% more listing descriptions in 2023 are using the word cozy. And cozy used to kind of be this bad word meaning small.
Yeah.
Cozy is, we're starting to see a lot more intention with the way people are living. They've got rooms that are designated for a specific purpose. And we're starting to just really see this trend pick up, which I think is fabulous. And cozy did mean that. I was like, a cozy little single room in San Quentin, California. It's near the water. Is that a prison cell? I think it is. And it was so, but you're right. Cozy does have that warmth to it, that positive kind of connotation. Now, this transition towards smaller homes, the data is pretty clear. We are building smaller and smaller homes for the last 6 or 7 years, I believe. This transition, though, can happen much faster in the new home world because, as we just kind of alluded to, they can change their mix. They can change their product much more quickly. The stock of resale homes is fairly stable from year to year. So is that what you're seeing? Are you seeing your new home builders really kind of pivot to smaller homes? And is attainability by far and away the reason why? Yeah, builders have this really unique opportunity to meet the needs of buyers where resale just can't do that. They can't pivot. You can't rebuild a resale home. And so builders are able to pivot. They're able to watch the market. They're able to listen to economists and all the numbers people and the data people and say, oh gosh, this is a trend that we see. How do we pivot and make sure that we're meeting the needs of buyers? We can still sell homes. Buyers still can get in homes. And it's kind of a match made in heaven that way.
Are you seeing more acceptance among the folks on your website toward attached homes, more searches for attached homes? Is that becoming more popular?
There's definitely, because of the affordability challenges, there's just an interest in different types of housing all around. So some of our data even shows, you've heard of this NIMBY movement, the not in my backyard. And for a long time, there was so much resistance to building any new types of housing in a specific neighborhood. But the latest data that we have, so 82% of neighbors, 78% of homeowners are saying that they're kind of this yes in my backyard kind of mentality instead of the not in my backyard mentality. And they agree that there should be some sort of other more attainable kind of that missing middle housing we talk about. So that could be ADUs or duplexes, triplexes, other types of housing that people can buy and get themselves into that home ownership.
That's actually really encouraging data point because you do hear so much of the NIMBYs out there. Maybe it's just that their voice is elevated because they're very active. And when they are out there, oh my God, it's the only issue they care about, it seems like. So I'm encouraged to hear that the silent majority, the silent vast majority is much more okay with that kind of denser housing.
That's right.
Okay. We'll see. We'll see how that plays out. I think I've said this elsewhere is that I think this movement to housing is going to get denser and denser and denser because of this need for attainability. Do you agree with that?
I do. I think we're already starting to see it, at least as I talk to home builders and read what they're doing and learn more about their priorities. They're advocating for, if they need zoning reform, they're advocating for zoning reform. They really want to see denser housing built because that's the only way that we're going to be able to meet buyers where they are with this affordability challenge.
You mentioned ADUs a minute ago. Do you have any data or any sense of are we seeing more ADUs, more rented out rooms within homes in your data? Are you seeing that?
It's a really interesting topic that we started exploring in our consumer housing trends reports a couple years ago. And we saw this huge spike, likely due to the affordability challenges that buyers are seeing. But we saw this huge spike in buyers that say that they are looking for a house where they can rent out all or part of the home to help offset those costs. We call it house hacking. So they're really looking to offset that monthly cost by supplementing their income in other ways. And Zillow even launched this year this room for rent feature. So it's not just an apartment that's for rent. Landlords can actually rent out just a single room. And that's just because we're seeing these preferences shift and the need to just want to rent out part to help offset those costs.
Pure speculation here as well, but it'll be interesting to see if we do see product change to be more accommodative of that. That is like that ADU is maybe something like separated from the house, more like to be separated from the house, like above the garage or a true casita, something like that, as opposed to a lot of quote unquote ADUs that are, they have the lockout door and a separate entrance, but otherwise they're part of the main house.
Yeah, it is speculative at this point, but the builders that I talk to kind of anecdotally are looking into multi-generational housing because you do have many different, and you've got Gen Xers like me who might have kids still living at home, but parents may need some extra care. And so they're looking at how to accommodate those needs in their building styles. So totally, I don't have data to support that, but it's definitely something that's on the minds of builders is how to build to these just different variations of households.
Don't put the grandparents above the garage. That's for your renter.
That's right.
Just to be clear. So one of your other predictions, though, that had something to do with the kind of consumer world and is pet friendly. And you specifically were talking about the renter world. What was that forecast about?
Oh gosh. I mean, we've been talking about pets all year, Dean. So our consumer housing trends report for our new construction buyers showed that 75% of new construction buyers have pets in their house. Those pets help make decisions on households. So we've been talking to builders all year about make sure you're marketing to those pet owners. If you've got dog washing stations or dog parks or whatever, make sure that you're marketing to that because people care. And that now our pet friendly kind of predictions are spilling over into the rental world. You've got 50% plus renters that have pets living with them. And so just because we're talking about renters doesn't mean those pets are any less important. It's important to highlight all the features that the building's got or that the community has to meet those demands.
We've heard that too. We do our market feasibility studies are both for sale and for rent as well. And you hear that a lot. The leasing agent will say, oh no, you better be very, very pet friendly. And it's one of the things that's also driving the build to rent in the single family home is that's just a much more pet friendly environment than an apartment is, no matter how friendly the management is.
That's right. Yeah.
I'm going to ask you two more questions about consumers and product. And one is just, we do live in this world where it's expensive to buy, and especially in the for sale world. Why are there so many buyers out there in the buying pool right now still?
So there will always be buyers. there are just life circumstances that make you have to move for one reason or another. It's like death, divorce, downsizing. There's a whole like 4 or 5 Ds, they call them. So that is a group that's always going to be moving. They have to move no matter what that kind of macro climate looks like. And so we have seen those buyers persist. We can always refinance. We can always, they said date the rate. And I think that we've been in this climate of elevated mortgage rates for so long that there's buyers that have been holding on, but they can't hold on anymore. And I think there's also just a level of acceptance of where we are. And buyers are starting to get out there. We're climbing our way out of the inventory kind of gutters that we've had for so many years. And so we're going to start seeing more buyers in the market.
And I think also those golden handcuffs, those 3% mortgage rates that we talk about, one of the main reasons we have fewer listings and more people on the sidelines, those are just gradually starting to loosen as all these folks reset, like you said, because they have to, because they got a bigger home, because their kids moved out and they're empty nesters now. They sort of have to buy. Every time they do that, they're resetting their mortgage rate. And those folks in golden handcuffs just kind of whittles away over time.
That's right.
But it's going to be a while because there's a lot of folks out there with 3.2 or whatever. Last question on consumers. Do you see a lot of consumers using tell me if I'm pronouncing this wrong, Zestimate, or is it Z-estimate? When they're doing Zestimate, when they're doing their home shopping? And I'm glad you clarified that. So it's Zestimate. Officially from Zillow, it's Zestimate.
Yes.
Okay. Are folks using that? Are they explicitly using that as kind of an anchor point?
I think it depends on your home shopper. I think the Zestimate is the best starting point for conversations, but whether it be between an agent and a buyer, or just as a buyer starts to kind of explore what their options are. That Zestimate is been a starting point, and it is a very trusted number among consumers.
Yeah, and I will acknowledge that it's gotten a lot better from what it was, 10 years ago or something like that. Because I work, a lot of my studies are in the Bay Area of California, where prices, you can literally go across the street and get a different market, and that's really hard to track. It's really hard.
It is. We used to talk to agents about the Zestimate a lot because they always had some sort of gripe with it, and my answer to that is, first of all, we have a landing page with all sorts of FAQs about this estimate, how it's derived, what's taken into account when we're calculating that number. And so I always encourage people to go read that. And then you kind of know where we're starting from. But this estimate is an algorithm. It's not a human being. And so you need professionals that can tell you the difference between one side of the street and the other. And maybe there's something that the computer doesn't know. And so this estimate is always a great starting point for conversations.
That's another thing I like to hear from you, because you're in multiple ways now. You're acknowledging that, hey, we're not perfect. There are other voices out here. Like you said, you'll redirect to the builder website, or in this case, look, those local brokers, they're going to have some insight, and you should tap into that. That's great. Let's talk about the market now. So what I want to do is look a little bit backward. I want to look at what your data has said about the last couple of years, maybe, and then we'll talk about what you think going forward about sales and price. So first, let's talk. Maybe we time it from sort of the post-COVID era. What kind of price changes are you seeing in your data, say the last year or the last year or two?
So we saw COVID really threw things all out of whack. So we have seen prices up 40% or more, depending on the market, since 2020. That's largely kind of flattened out, but it's still very market dependent. Markets tell a different story depending on where you are. What we've seen this year is home values they've very much started to kind of level out. And what we're predicting for next year is even more of that. So it's a little more relief that we're seeing for those poor home shoppers that have seen just this enormous spike in price. So we're predicting about a 2.6% home value gain in 2025, which is much more reasonable. That's kind of on track with normal numbers.
2.6. Okay. And that's nationwide figure.
That's a nationwide figure. Again, it's a market by market story. So every time I present on market updates, LA and Southern California comes in as just this weird market. Prices have skyrocketed, and it's largely because there is no supply.
That's
and so
right,
you just watch. But if you now go to your Floridas and your Texases where there is supply, and the resale market is coming back, you're starting to see those prices flatten, maybe even decline a little bit in certain markets. But that's why we say these are nationwide numbers, but you've got to look at a market by market story to tell the whole thing.
It's funny you say that. In Northern California, it's kind of similar. The market, the Silicon Valley market, is price wise doing great. Sales wise, it's very hit and miss, and it's because there is so little inventory that those guys are very focused on high prices. So they really just play with a very small part of the market.
That's right.
How about inventory and listings? Listings were shrinking for so long. Then we had these increases in mortgage rates. What have you seen in terms of listings recently?
Well, listings are slowly climbing their way out of the doldrums that we've seen them in over the past few years. There was a point last year where we were down 50% plus from what we typically want to see as far as listing count. We're currently at about 25% down from pre-pandemic levels of active listings, but it's getting better. And so I think we're going to see more and more of that recovery into 2025.
I'm glad you do that. That's what we do too. Kind of look at, let's talk about 2019 rather than year over year, because year over year has been weird since COVID started, and we're still there. But that is true. So
no normal for the last 5 years. And so we have to look at the 2018, 2019. But what's also different about those years is they were considered normal, but then we went into this hyper fast market and prices increased so high. And now that we're getting back to normal, people are like, whoa, look at this market. It just crashed and it's slowing down so much, but it's actually not.
It's perception. It's
is.
So perceptions. I just had some of the folks internally who do our survey, and we're asking the question, do you think people are looking back at 2024 with a little bit of a more negativity because January and February were smoking hot and then things kind of slowed down, but they normalize. But because it's a little head fake from January, February, our perception is that the year was a little more disappointing than it really was.
I think so. I think that's how it kind of goes.
I am flogging that theory relentlessly anyway. But hopefully it's actually true in this case. How about in terms of your projection for mortgage rates? What are you seeing in 25 with regard to mortgage rates?
Our economists are seeing more of the same, unfortunately. So they are predicting just that same volatility that we've been seeing. They're expecting that to continue into 2025. And it's more of the same. I think we're all kind of used to seeing that.
Is the watchword uncertainty? We just literally don't know what's going to happen.
It could be. I think just much like this year, it's like we're expecting this major downturn, which would lead to a lower mortgage rate. But then that economic downturn, the economy's fine.
Yeah.
And so why would interest rates go any lower? And so it's just this ping pong game of waiting for news, and that news doesn't come. So we're trying to correct it.
Honestly, it's the toughest thing. Mortgage rates may be the most difficult thing to predict right now. I don't know that anyone can with a lot of
that's where you get this mortgage rate volatility prediction. It's we don't know, and we're just expecting more of that same sentiment.
Qadra, how about home sales? When you put all these things together with volatile mortgage rates and listings kind of coming up, what do you see for home sales next year?
So home sales, we're predicting just a little bit of increased activity in home sales. So in 2023, last year, what year are we in, Dean? In 2023.
It's hard to say. It's volatile like mortgage rates.
I swear. Okay. So in 2023, we had about 4.1 million sales. In 2024, we're forecasting about 4.1, so pretty flat. And then in 2025, we are looking at just a slight uptick, 4.16 million sales.
Okay.
So just, I guess any improvement is good improvement, right?
We'll take it. We'll take any uptick in sales for sure. Like you said, with mortgage rates volatile, an increase in sales would be very welcome. Another one of your forecasts was the geographic impacts nationwide, that you see maybe some more good times spreading out some areas like the Southwest of the U.S. Tease that out a
So
little bit.
what you're referring to is a seller's market versus a buyer's market.
Okay.
And since COVID, really, it's been a seller's market everywhere because there's been no supply. And so buyers are scrambling for anything they can get. There was a time when you had 30 offers on one home and it was over list price. Well, those days have largely subsided. In those markets, the Southeast markets, Florida, Texas, kind of spreading throughout that region, the market is already considered a buyer's market, meaning buyers have the advantage. They can start negotiating again. They can start really getting some things for themselves in those deals. And our economists are predicting into 2025 that we're going to see those buyer's markets spread into the Southwest as well.
I see. So relief from the consumer's perspective.
Definitely relief from the consumer's perspective.
That's interesting. Okay. Qadra, do you see any impact from changes or trends in the work from home movement, also the back to office movement? Because that could also impact geography, couldn't it?
Definitely impact geography, and it impacts builders in a different kind of way. So I'm going to tease our 2025 Consumer Housing Trends Report. It's coming out in February, but we're starting to see early data showing that because of this return to office, we're seeing an uptick in kind of the build on your lot and the infill new builds starting to increase. So more to come on that. I don't have specific numbers, but we're definitely watching because of that return to office and kind of your more urban town centers.
Yeah, exactly. So we'll see. That's where it really will play out to urban versus suburban versus exurban. The more this back to office kind of takes hold, you can see some shift back to those urban cores. We'll see.
That's right.
How about just Zillow's traffic numbers? Those 200 million eyeballs, are those pretty stable that last year and the year before?
You know, we are lucky to have a brand that is so trusted and so beloved by consumers. We have, by and large, we've really weathered the storm, and we've been pretty consistent over the last few years, even with all the kind of noisy headlines and macro conditions.
Yeah. The last 2025 bold prediction that we were going to talk about is rent concessions in the apartment world. What are you guys forecasting for that?
So we're forecasting, we had this huge boom in the rental market, lots of supply coming onto the market. And so there's really been an opportunity for renters to negotiate those concessions, 3 months rent, whatever the concession may be. That's predicted to continue kind of through part of 2025. But by the end of the year, we're forecasting the concession negotiations to kind of dwindle out by the end of the year. So go get it now.
Yeah. Is that because we actually may be heading toward a significant decrease in new apartment introductions, because all those multifamily permits that were rushing to the market a couple of years ago, those are winding down now. And because capital's been so hard to get for those apartment developers, I think we could see a pretty diminished supply world in the apartment sector.
Yeah, I think 2025 is going to be an interesting year to watch in the rental segment.
Sign your 13-month lease. We're seeing so many more 13-month leases now. I love that. Qadra, how are consumers going to navigate this volatile world in the mortgage rates that we're talking about?
Yeah, it's a really good question, because buying power diminishes or increases pretty incredibly just with even a quarter point of adjustment on a mortgage rate. So what I love that Zillow just launched, it's a feature called buyability. And so what it does is it takes the current mortgage rate, and then you put your own personal inputs in. So your income, your credit score, your debt. And then what this feature can do is it'll take that mortgage rate and it's going to only surface homes that are within your buyability range. And so it really gives you kind of this sense of control and comfort, knowing that you're seeing listings that you can afford. And it might be different listings depending on the week. You know, we talked about rates are a little lower this week. Maybe they go up next week. But that buyability feature is going to help buyers navigate through what they can afford. So it just takes that heavy lifting off of them.
Do you think that'll, I don't know if induce is the right word, but do you think more folks will be sort of trying to time the market and time mortgage rates with that tool at their disposal?
Gosh, I mean, we could speculate on that.
I know.
I always tell people, don't try to plan for a perfect market. You know,
I know, but that tool strikes me as something that could be really helpful from the consumer perspective for that.
Yeah, you can kind of keep your eye on things and say, like I like 123 Main Street. I can afford it, right? I can afford it right now. I'm not ready yet. And you can keep your eye on it and wait. I don't know, maybe.
Yeah, we'll see. There was one other thing you published not that long ago, a month or so ago, where your survey showed that among new home buyers, I think the number was 45% are actually attaining a mortgage rate below 5%, which I'm not going to lie. So I know there's a ton of buy downs going on there. That really surprised me. What's happening there?
Yeah, this is just consumer housing trends. 45% of buyers
Yeah.
are reporting that they've got an interest rate under 5%. And now over a third of that pool of the 45% of buyers, over a third of them are reporting that it's because of a seller or a home builder doing a rate buy down.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, that's so effective. We talk time and time again when we're in sales offices, we hear the most effective incentive is for sure rate buy downs. Not everywhere, but it's more effective at that entry level and first move up. It's just a necessity at this point.
It really is. And if you think about builders competing with resale, this is just yet another area where they can win. And you're helping consumers get to a monthly payment and get into a home that they love. And so it's just a really good match and a huge opportunity that builders have.
I like that. Qadra, let's end there. We have this volatility, but we have these tools to sort of smooth out that volatility a little bit. And we also have some optimism that we are seeing this attainability, whether it's through smaller homes or attached or something like that. But still, we're seeing some more homes come online that are attainable. And it seems like new home builders definitely are hyper-focused on affordability too.
They are poised to be the heroes of the hour.
Let's do it. Awesome. Qadra, thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciated it. I hope everybody appreciates just as much as I did.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me, and happy holidays.
Oh yeah, that's right. We'll see. And if you listen to this after Christmas, she means happy holidays in 2025.
I mean, happy Q1.
Happy Q1. I like that. Awesome. Thank you, Qadra. This has been the New Home Insights Podcast. I'm Dean Worley. We'll see you next time.